Captain Lee Do-hyun stared at the massive screen in front of him and could not believe what he was seeing. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, filled with the twisted remains of ships, unlike anything in the known galaxy. The metal was black and covered with strange symbols that seemed to shift and move when he looked at them directly. "How many ships do you think were here?" asked Commander Park Jin-woo as he moved closer to the captain's chair. His face was pale and his hands shook slightly as he held his data tablet. Dr. Kim Na-young looked up from her scanner readings and shook her head slowly. "At least 300 vessels, maybe more. The largest one was easily 5 kilometers long. This was not just a fleet, it was an entire civilization's navy." The new Soul drifted carefully through the graveyard of alien ships. Captain Lee had been exploring space for 20 years but had never seen anything like this. The ships were clearly not human, but they were also not from any of the 12 known alien species that humans had contact with. The design was too advanced, too different, too old. Dr. Choi Min-ho called out from his station near the back of the bridge. "Captain, I am getting some very strange readings from these wrecks. The metal contains elements that should not exist according to our periodic table. Also, the energy signatures are unlike anything we have in our databases." "How old are these ships?" Captain Lee asked as he walked over to look at the readings himself. "That is the problem, sir. According to carbon dating and quantum decay analysis, these ships are approximately 50,000 years old. But that is impossible because 50,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves on Earth." Dr. Kim Na-young suddenly gasped and dropped her scanner. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at her. Her face had gone completely white and she was staring at her readings with wide eyes. "What is it, Doctor?" asked Commander Park. "I am detecting human DNA signatures in the debris field. Not just traces, but significant amounts. There are also artifacts that appear to be of Earth origin mixed in with the alien wreckage." Captain Lee felt his stomach drop. "That cannot be right. Run the scans again." Dr. Kim ran the scans 3 more times, each time getting the same results. "The DNA is definitely human, and the artifacts include what appears to be primitive stone, tools, and metal fragments that match Earth geological signatures. But according to the dating, these items are the same age as the alien ships." The bridge fell silent as everyone tried to understand what they were hearing. How could human DNA and Earth artifacts be mixed in with 50,000-year-old alien ship remains in a star system that was hundreds of light years from Earth? Dr. Choi looked up from his instruments again. "There is something else, Captain. The battle damage on these ships shows evidence of weapons that we cannot identify. The energy patterns suggest technology far beyond anything we have today, far beyond anything any known species has." "You mean something destroyed this fleet with weapons more advanced than ours?" Commander Park asked. "Much more advanced. The damage patterns show that whatever attacked these ships had the ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level. Some of the ships appear to have been torn apart from the inside out." Captain Lee studied the main screen again. The alien ships had a reptilian design to them, with scales and spines worked into the metal. They looked like they had been built by a race of dragons or lizards. The largest ship in the center of the debris field still maintained most of its structure, though it had a massive hole burned through its center. "Can we identify what species built these ships?" he asked. Dr. Kim checked her xenoarchaeology database. The design elements matched some very old legends and myths from various species across the galaxy. "If I am reading this correctly, these ships belonged to something called the Draconian Empire. According to the old stories, they were a powerful reptilian race that disappeared mysteriously long before any current species achieved spaceflight." "Disappeared how?" "No one knows. They were supposedly the dominant force in the galaxy. Then, one day they were just gone. Most species assumed the stories were just myths because no one had ever found any real evidence of their existence." Commander Park pointed at the screen. "Well, we have found our evidence now." Captain Lee made a decision. "We need to investigate the largest ship. If we are going to understand what happened here, we need to get inside that flagship and see what we can find." Dr. Choi shook his head. "Captain, that ship is 50,000 years old and has been floating in space all this time. It might not be safe to board." The hull appears to be intact except for the central damage. Life support should work once we get inside. Dr. Kim, prepare an away team. Commander Park, ready the shuttle. 3 hours later, Captain Lee found himself floating through the corridors of the alien flagship. The interior was massive, built for beings much larger than humans. The walls were covered with the same shifting symbols they had seen on the outside, and the air had a strange metallic taste despite their environmental suits. Dr. Kim was scanning everything with her portable equipment. Captain, I am detecting some kind of data storage system near what appears to be the bridge. The technology is incredibly advanced, but it seems to still be partially functional. They made their way through corridors filled with strange alien writing and artwork depicting battles between different species. The Draconians appeared to have been warriors, and their ships were designed as much for intimidation as for combat. The bridge was enormous, with a command chair that would have fit a being 3 meters tall. Around the chair were control panels, covered with the shifting symbols. At the center of the bridge was a crystalline structure that pulsed with a faint blue light. That must be the data core, Dr. Kim said. If we can extract it safely, we might be able to learn what happened here. As they approached the crystal, Captain Lee noticed something carved into the metal floor around it. The symbols were different. From the others they had seen, more angular and somehow familiar. Dr. Kim gasped again. Captain, these symbols around the data core are not Draconian. They appear to be some kind of primitive human script, similar to ancient Earth languages. How is that possible? I do not know, but there is something else. The crystal is not just storing data about what happened to this fleet. It appears to contain some kind of message, and according to my scans, the message is addressed to someone specific. Captain Lee looked at the readings on her scanner. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough to make his blood run cold. The message was addressed to the children of the Third World. Earth was the third planet from its sun. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, and Captain Lee spent most of that time staring at the Draconian data core they had recovered from the alien flagship. The crystal sat in a special containment field in the ship's laboratory, pulsing with that same blue light they had seen on the bridge. Dr. Kim and her team worked around the clock trying to decode the information stored within it. Admiral Song Haiwan was waiting for them when the new Soul docked at Luna Station. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Captain Lee had known her for 10 years, but he had never seen her look as serious as she did when she greeted them at the airlock. Captain Lee, I need to speak with you and your team immediately. What you found out there has caused quite a stir back on Earth. They gathered in a secure briefing room where Admiral Song introduced them to 2 new people. Dr. Yoon Taemin was a thin man with thick glasses who specialized in alien languages and ancient codes. Agent Kang Soo-young was a government intelligence officer who looked like she had not slept in days. Before we begin, Admiral Song said, I need everyone to understand that what we discuss here is classified at the highest levels. The information you discovered cannot be shared with anyone outside this room. Dr. Kim placed the data core on the table. Admiral, we have been trying to decode this for weeks. The language is unlike anything we have encountered before, and the technology used to store the information is centuries ahead of our current capabilities. Dr. Yoon adjusted his glasses and leaned forward to examine the crystal. Actually, the language is not completely unknown. I have been studying fragments of similar writing for the past 5 years. The government has been collecting pieces of this script from archaeological sites around Earth. What do you mean? Asked Captain Lee. Agent. Kang opened a briefcase and pulled out several photographs. The images showed ancient cave paintings, stone tablets, and metal fragments that had been discovered at various locations around Earth. All of them contained the same angular symbols they had seen on the Draconian ship. These artifacts have been found at sites dating back 50,000 years or more, Agent Kang explained. For decades, archaeologists assumed they were created by some unknown human civilization that was lost to history, but now we know the truth. Dr. Yoon connected the data core to a quantum computer and began running translation programs. The script is definitely human in origin, but it represents a level of technological and linguistic development that should not have existed 50,000 years ago. According to everything we know about human history, our ancestors were barely using stone tools at that time. The computer screen filled with symbols and text as the translation programs worked. Slowly, words began to appear in modern Korean and English. Captain Lee read the first few lines and felt his hands start to shake. To the children of Sol 3, if you are reading this message, then you have returned to the stars and found the remains of our ancient enemy. Know that the Draconian Empire sought to enslave your world and claim your people as their property. Know also that they failed because your ancestors were not the primitive beings they believed you to be. Dr. Kim looked up from her own scanner readings. There is more. The core contains detailed records of what appears to be a war between Earth and the Draconian Empire. But according to these records, Earth won. Admiral Song nodded grimly. This matches what we have learned from other sources. Agent Kang, show them the classified files. Agent Kang pulled out another set of documents. For the past 30 years, governments around Earth have been secretly excavating sites that contain technology far beyond our current understanding. We have found weapons that can manipulate energy at the quantum level, vehicles that can travel faster than light, and computers that operate using principles we still cannot comprehend. You mean there was an advanced human civilization 50,000 years ago? Commander Park asked. Not just advanced, Dr. Yoon said as he continued translating the Draconian records. According to these files, ancient humans possessed technology that made them the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Draconians called them the Terran Ascendancy. The computer finished processing another section of the data core. The translation that appeared made everyone in the room fall silent. The Terran fleet arrived at our homeworld within days of our assault on Sol 3. We do not understand how they traveled so quickly across such vast distances. Our defensive systems, which had never failed against any enemy, were destroyed before we could even detect their approach. The Terrans did not negotiate or demand surrender. They simply began dismantling our entire civilization. Captain Lee read the next section aloud. Our greatest war princes and most advanced ships were defeated as easily as children playing with toys. The Terran weapons operated on principles we cannot understand. They did not destroy our ships with energy or explosives. Instead, they somehow caused our vessels to cease existing at the molecular level. Dr. Kim was running detailed scans of the data core itself. Captain, this crystal contains not just text records but also holographic data. I think I can display some of the actual events that were recorded. She activated the holographic projector, and the room filled with three-dimensional images from 50,000 years ago. They watched as massive Draconian fleets larger than anything humanity had ever built attacked a blue-green planet that was unmistakably Earth. The reptilian ships fired powerful weapons at the surface, but the beams were absorbed by some kind of invisible shield that covered the entire planet. Then the human ships appeared. They were sleek and silver, much smaller than the Draconian vessels, but moving with impossible speed and grace. The human fleet did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, the Draconian ships simply began to come apart, their hulls dissolving into nothing as if they had never existed. This is impossible, Commander Park whispered. No technology can do that. The holographic record continued. They watched as the human ships pursued the fleeing Draconian fleet across the galaxy, systematically destroying every outpost and colony they found. The war lasted only months, but by the end of it, the mighty Draconian Empire had been completely erased from existence. Dr. Yoon found more text in the data core. The final entries are different. They are not written by Draconians but by humans. The translation appeared on screen. We have achieved that which we set out to do. The threat to our world and our people has been eliminated, but in our victory, we have lost something essential to what makes us human. We have become too powerful, too removed from the struggle and growth that gave us strength. The Council has decided that we must choose between godhood and humanity. Agent Kang leaned forward. What does that mean? Dr. Yoon continued reading. We will preserve our knowledge and our technology in hidden archives throughout the system, but we ourselves must return to the Earth, to live once again as mortals, to rediscover wonder and curiosity and the drive to grow. Our children will find their own path to the stars, and when they do, they will be ready to inherit what we have left for them. Admiral Song stood up slowly. The data core contains coordinates to one of these hidden archives. It is located in our own solar system, hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Captain Lee looked around the room at the faces of his colleagues and friends. You mean there is an ancient human facility out there right now, waiting for us to find? It not just waiting, Agent Kang said quietly. According to the final entry in the data core, the facility has been monitoring Earth for 50,000 years, waiting for humanity to develop space travel and return to the stars. The message says that when we finally reach the archive, it will wake up. Dr. Kim checked her readings one more time. Captain, there is something else. The data core is not just a storage device. It is also a transmitter. When we activated it to read the contents, it sent out a signal. A signal to where? To the coordinates of the hidden archive. We have already told them that we are coming. The facility was nothing like what they had expected to find. Hidden among the asteroids between Mars and Jupiter was a structure so massive that it dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. It was shaped like a perfect sphere, 10 kilometers in diameter, with a surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As the new Sol approached, sections of the sphere began to glow with soft blue light. It knows we are here, Dr. Bei Ji-won said from her position at the engineering console. She was the best systems engineer in the human fleet, but even she looked nervous as she watched the alien facility come to life. Captain Lee stood on the bridge with Colonel Lim Dong-hae, who had joined their mission along with a team of Special Forces soldiers. The colonel was a quiet man who had seen combat on 3 different worlds, but he kept checking his weapons as they got closer to the ancient structure. Are we certain this thing is safe? Colonel Lim asked. Something that has been waiting 50,000 years might not be happy to see us. Before Captain Lee could answer, every screen on the ship lit up with the same image. A figure appeared that looked human, but somehow more than human. It was tall and wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight. Its face was kind but ancient, and its eyes held the wisdom of millennia. Welcome, children of Earth, the figure said in perfect Korean. I am the curator, guardian of Archive Omega. I have been waiting for you to return to the stars. Dr. Kim stepped forward. You have been waiting for us? How did you know we would come? The curator smiled. Because it was planned this way. Your ancestors knew that one day their descendants would venture beyond Earth and discover the truth of their heritage. They left me here to guide you when that time came. The image of the curator gestured, and the screen showed the interior of the facility. It was filled with corridors and chambers that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Technology lined the walls that looked like it belonged in dreams rather than reality. Your ship will be brought aboard safely, the curator said. There is much you need to see and understand. Captain Lee felt the new Sol being pulled gently toward the facility by some invisible force. There were no docking clamps or airlocks. Visible, but somehow the massive sphere opened like a flower to receive their ship. They found themselves in a docking bay that was perfectly sized for their vessel, as if it had been built specifically for them. The atmosphere inside the facility was breathable, though it had a strange quality that made everyone feel more alert and awake than usual. The curator met them in person at the airlock, and Captain Lee was struck by how real and solid the ancient guardian appeared to be. You are an artificial intelligence, Dr. Bei asked. I am what your ancestors became when they transcended the limitations of biological existence, the curator replied, but I chose to remain here in physical form to serve as your guide. They walked through corridors that were lined with displays showing the history of ancient humanity. Captain Lee watched holographic records of cities that floated in the sky, of humans who could manipulate matter with their thoughts, of ships that could cross the galaxy in moments. Your ancestors achieved technological singularity approximately 55,000 years ago, the curator explained as they walked. They became capable of anything they could imagine. They could reshape planets, create new forms of life, travel through time itself. Colonel Lim looked at the displays showing ancient human technology. If they were so powerful, why did they give it up? The curator stopped walking and turned to face them. Because power without wisdom leads to stagnation. Your ancestors realized that in becoming gods they had lost the very qualities that made them human. Curiosity, struggle, growth, the capacity to be surprised and to learn. They entered a vast chamber at the center of the facility. The walls were covered with crystalline structures similar to the data core they had found on the Draconian ship. But these crystals were much larger and more complex, and they pulsed with rainbow colors that hurt to look at directly. This is the archive itself, the curator said. It contains the complete knowledge and technology of your ancient civilization. Everything your ancestors knew is stored here, waiting for you to reclaim it. Dr. Kim ran her scanner over one of the crystal structures. The energy readings are off the scale. This single crystal contains more information than every computer on Earth combined. Each crystal contains the complete technical specifications for technologies that your current science considers impossible, the curator confirmed. Faster than light travel, matter manipulation, energy weapons, artificial gravity, time dilation fields. Commander Park studied the holographic displays that surrounded them. But if our ancestors had all of this technology, how did they lose a war? To the Draconians? The curator looked confused for a moment. Lose? Your ancestors did not lose the war with the Draconians, they won it decisively. The Draconian Empire was completely destroyed in a matter of months. Then why did they give up their technology? Captain Lee asked. Because winning the war showed them what they had become. Watch. The chamber filled with holographic images from the ancient war. They watched as human ships appeared instantly throughout Draconian space, not traveling there but simply existing wherever they chose to be. They saw Draconian planets being transformed from garden worlds into barren rocks with a single thought from human commanders. Your ancestors realized that they had become too powerful, the curator said sadly. They could destroy entire civilizations without effort or emotion. They had lost the capacity for mercy, for growth, for the very humanity that had made them strong in the first place. The hologram showed the final battle of the war. A single human vessel faced the remaining Draconian fleet of thousands of ships. Instead of destroying them, the human ship somehow caused all of the Draconian vessels to simply stop existing, their crews transported to safety on distant worlds. The decision was made to reset human civilization, the curator continued. Your ancestors would give up their technology and their power, returning to Earth to live as mortals. They would allow their descendants to rediscover wonder and curiosity and the drive to explore. Dr. Bay was studying the crystal arrays with growing excitement. But they preserved everything here for us to find when we were ready. Yes. The archives contain templates for rebuilding their technology, but only when humanity has proven that it possesses the wisdom to use such power responsibly. Colonel Lim looked around the chamber nervously. How do we prove that? Before the curator could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The crystals flashed with urgent red light, and the holographic displays showed images of space outside the solar system. What is happening? Captain Lee demanded. The curator's expression became grave. The signal from the Draconian data core has reached the outer galaxy. The surviving Draconian colonies know that humanity has returned to the stars. They are coming. The displays showed a massive fleet moving toward Earth at incredible speed. Hundreds of ships larger and more advanced than the ancient vessels they had found in the debris field. How long do we have? Commander Park asked. 6 months, the curator replied. But there is something else you must know. When I awakened, to greet you, I also awakened Earth's ancient defense systems. They have been dormant for 50,000 years, but they are beginning to stir. Captain Lee felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of defense systems? The kind your ancestors built to protect Earth while they slept. The kind that operate on principles your current science cannot comprehend. The curator gestured, and the displays showed Earth from space. But now they could see things that had been invisible before. Structures hidden in the moon, weapon platforms disguised as asteroids, energy fields that surrounded the entire planet. Earth has never been defenseless, the curator said. Your ancestors made certain of that, but the systems were designed to respond to threats from 50,000 years ago. They may not distinguish between enemies and allies. Dr. Bay stared at the displays in wonder and terror. You mean we might be in as much danger from our own defenses as from the Draconians? That depends, the curator said, on whether modern humanity can prove itself worthy of their ancient heritage before the battle begins. War Prince Vrak Thul stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the reports his scouts had brought back from the Sol system. For 50,000 years, his people had lived in hiding among the outer worlds of distant galaxies, always watching, and waiting for signs that the humans had returned to the stars. Now that day had finally come, and he felt both fear and rage burning in his chest. The cursed children of Sol 3 have awakened their ancient guardian, his tactical officer reported. The younger Draconian scales were dark with anxiety. Our sensors detected the activation of Archive Omega 3 months ago. Vrak Thul turned to look at the holographic display showing the human solar system. His ancestors had told stories of that place for generations, stories of a blue world defended by impossible weapons and creatures who fought like demons when threatened. How many ships do we have ready for the assault, he asked. 800 vessels, War Prince, every ship from every surviving colony. If we fail here, there will be no second chance for our people. On Earth, Dr. O Sunwoo worked desperately in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Luna Station. She was humanity's leading expert on military technology, but the ancient human weapon systems were far beyond anything she had ever imagined. The crystal arrays from Archive Omega had provided complete technical specifications, but understanding them was like trying to comprehend the thoughts of gods. The neural interface is ready for testing, she called out to Captain Han Mirai, who was strapping herself into the pilot seat of humanity's first reconstructed ancient fighter craft. The ship was beautiful and terrifying, its hull made from materials that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Captain Han had volunteered to be the first test pilot, despite knowing that 3 previous volunteers had died when their minds could not handle the connection to the ancient systems. The ships required more than mechanical skill to operate. They responded to human consciousness in ways that normal technology never could. Beginning neural link activation, Dr. O said, as she initiated the connection between Captain Han and the fighter craft. The ship immediately began to glow with soft light, and Captain Han gasped as information flooded directly into her brain. She could feel the ship around her like a second skin. Every system, every weapon, every capability was as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. But more than that, she could sense something vast and intelligent within the ship's systems, something that had been waiting for a human pilot to awaken it. The connection is stable, Captain Han reported, though her voice sounded different somehow. I can feel everything. The ship wants to fly. Meanwhile, Admiral Song Haiwan stood in the command center on Luna Station and watched as Earth's ancient defense systems continued to awaken around the solar system. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as asteroids for 50 millennia were revealing themselves and powering up. The moon itself was showing energy signatures that suggested it was not entirely natural. Admiral, we are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the asteroid belt, Commander Park reported from his station. Also, something is happening to Jupiter. Our sensors are showing artificial structures appearing on and around the planet. On the main display, they watched as Jupiter seemed to unfold like a flower. What they had always assumed was a gas giant was revealed to be a camouflaged battle station the size of a small moon. Ancient human technology had been hiding the truth about their solar system for 50,000 years. The curator appeared as a hologram in the command center. The defense grid is activating according to its original programming. Your ancestors designed it to respond automatically to any large-scale threat approaching Earth. Can you control it? Admiral Song asked. Not directly. The systems were designed to operate independently to prevent any single point of failure, but they will respond to commands from properly authorized human pilots flying ancient technology. Captain Han's voice came through the communication system from her test flight. Admiral, this ship is incredible. I can feel connections to every defense platform in the system. The ancient technology is all linked together somehow, back in deep space. Varak fleet was approaching the outer edge of the Sol system when their sensors detected the first signs of the ancient defenses. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with weapon platforms and defensive structures that materialized out of nothing. Warprints, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the human system, his sensor operator called out. The readings are off our scales. How is this possible? Frakthul studied the tactical display and felt the same terror his ancestors must have experienced 50,000 years ago. The humans had not just returned to the stars. They had awakened the very weapons that had destroyed the Draconian Empire. All ships battle formation. Prepare for immediate assault. We cannot allow them time to fully activate their defenses. The Draconian fleet accelerated toward Earth, their ships bristling with weapons that had taken 50,000 years to develop. They had learned from their ancestors' defeat and built new technologies specifically designed to fight the humans. But as they approached the inner system, they discovered that their preparations might not be enough. Captain Han was flying patrol near Mars when the Draconian fleet appeared on her sensors. Through her neural link with the ancient fighter, she could feel the approaching enemy ships like a storm on the horizon. But she could also feel something else, the awakening consciousness of Earth's entire defense network. Admiral, I am detecting the Draconian fleet. 800 ships approaching. Fast. But there is something else. The defense grid is not just activating, it is thinking. On Luna Station, Dr. O watched her instruments in amazement. The neural patterns from Captain Han's ship are spreading throughout the entire network. The ancient technology is using her consciousness as a template to wake up its own artificial intelligence. The curator appeared again, looking more concerned than they had ever seen him. This was not supposed to happen. The defense systems were designed to be controlled by human pilots, not to develop their own consciousness. Is that dangerous? Admiral Song asked. I do not know. Your ancestors never anticipated this situation. We are in uncharted territory. The Draconian fleet reached the outer planets and immediately came under attack from defense platforms that had been hiding throughout the system. But instead of the devastating assault they expected, the ancient weapons seemed to be holding back, testing the enemy rather than destroying them outright. Captain Han felt the network's consciousness growing stronger as more defense platforms came online. Through her neural link, she could sense the artificial intelligence trying to understand the current situation. It had been programmed to protect Earth from the Draconian Empire, but that empire had been destroyed 50,000 years ago. These new Draconians were descendants of survivors, not the original enemy. Admiral, I think the defense network is confused, she reported. It was designed to fight a war that ended 50,000 years ago. It does not know how to handle this situation. Frakthul watched in amazement as his fleet penetrated deep into the human system without being destroyed. The ancient weapons were firing on his ships, but not with full power. It was as if they were being restrained by something. Warprints. The human defenses are not operating at full capacity, his tactical officer reported. We are taking damage, but not the total destruction our ancestors described. Then we have a chance, Frakthul declared. All ships, full attack. Target the third planet. As the Draconian fleet charged toward Earth, Captain Han made a decision that would change the course of the battle. Instead of trying to control the defense network, she opened her mind completely to its artificial consciousness and allowed it to see the current situation through human eyes. The network suddenly understood. These were not the same Draconians who had threatened Earth 50,000 years ago. They were descendants, survivors, refugees who had been living in fear of human retribution for millennia. The ancient programming began to adapt, seeking a solution that would protect Earth without repeating the genocide of the ancient war. But the network's awakening had one unintended consequence. Its signal was now broadcasting throughout the galaxy, announcing to every species that humanity had returned and that Earth was protected by weapons beyond imagination. Captain Lee Do-yun found himself floating in a space that existed between dimensions, connected directly to the consciousness of Earth's ancient defense network. Through Captain Han's neural link, the network had reached out to every human in the solar system, seeking to understand what humanity had become during their 50,000-year sleep. The experience was overwhelming. He could feel the thoughts and memories of millions of humans across Earth and its colonies. He could sense their hopes, their fears, their dreams of exploring the galaxy in peace. But more than that, he could feel the ancient consciousness of the defense network trying to understand how these modern humans were different from their ancestors. In the command center on Luna Station, Admiral Song watched as the battle unfolded in ways no one had predicted. The Draconian fleet had reached Earth's orbit, but instead of destroying them, the defense platforms were systematically disabling their ships without harming the crews inside. It was a display of precision and restraint that should have been impossible with weapons designed for total warfare. "Admiral, the defense network is using non-lethal force," Dr. O reported in amazement. "Every Draconian ship is being disabled, but their life support systems are being preserved." The curator appeared as a hologram, but now he looked different. Somehow, his ancient features showed something that might have been surprise or perhaps pride. "Your modern consciousness is affecting the network in ways I never expected," he said. "The ancient systems were designed for total victory, but they are learning compassion from their connection to present-day humanity." On the Draconian flagship, War Prince Vrakthul watched in disbelief as his mighty fleet was rendered helpless in minutes. But instead of the destruction his ancestors had described, he found his ship surrounded by a gentle energy field that prevented any hostile action, while keeping his crew safe. A holographic figure appeared on his bridge. It was Captain Lee, but somehow more than just Captain Lee. Through the network connection, he spoke with the authority of all humanity. "War Prince Vrakthul," Captain Lee said, "your ancestors came to Earth 50,000 years ago seeking to enslave our people. Our ancestors defeated them utterly because they threatened what we held dear. But you are not your ancestors, just as we are not ours." Vrakthul stared at the human image. "Then you will destroy us as your ancestors destroyed our empire?" "No. We have learned something our ancestors had forgotten. True strength is not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to choose when not to use that power." The network began showing holographic displays throughout both fleets, images of what had really happened 50,000 years ago. The ancient humans had not just defeated the Draconians. They had systematically dismantled an empire that had enslaved dozens of species across the galaxy. But in doing so, they had become exactly what they had fought against: conquerors who imposed their will through superior force. Captain Han's voice came through the communication systems, speaking from her position, merged with the defense network. The ancient humans realized that absolute power corrupts absolutely. They chose to give up their godlike abilities because they understood that beings with unlimited power inevitably lose their humanity. In the space between dimensions, Captain Lee felt the presence of something vast and ancient. The collective, the merged consciousness of humanity's ancestors, had been sleeping within the network for 50 millennia. Now they were awakening, drawn by the connection between past and present. "We greet our descendants," the collective spoke through him. "We see that you have grown beyond what we were. You have rediscovered the compassion and wisdom that we lost in our pursuit of power." The holographic display showed the truth of the ancient reset. Humanity's ancestors had not just given up their technology. They had deliberately scattered themselves across Earth, choosing to live as primitive tribes so that their descendants would have to rediscover cooperation, empathy, and the drive to explore rather than conquer. "We were conquerors," the collective continued. "We bent the galaxy to our will through force. But you are explorers. You seek to understand rather than dominate. This is why you are worthy of our legacy." War Prince Vrakthul found himself transported to the same dimensional space as Captain Lee and the other human commanders. Around them, the collective showed images of what the galaxy could become. Not an empire ruled by force, but a community of species working together to explore the universe. "Your people have lived in fear for 50,000 years, the collective said to Vrakthul. "Fear of retribution, fear of discovery, fear of the humans who destroyed your empire. But these humans are not us. They are what we chose to become. Dr. Kim Na-young, connected to the network through the research stations, suddenly understood the full scope of what was happening. The ancient defense systems were not just weapons, they were teachers, waiting for humanity to prove it had learned the lessons of the past. The network began revealing hidden archives throughout the galaxy, repositories of knowledge left by the ancient humans, not just for their own descendants, but for any species that could demonstrate wisdom and compassion. Technologies for healing worlds, for traveling between stars without violence, for creating rather than destroying. The reset was not just for humanity, the collective explained. It was for the entire galaxy. We removed ourselves as rulers, so that all species could develop naturally, without the shadow of our dominance shaping their growth. War Prince Vrak Thul felt something he had never experienced before. Hope. You would share this knowledge with us, after what our ancestors attempted? Captain Lee, speaking with the voice of modern humanity, nodded. Your ancestors made a mistake 50,000 years ago. Our ancestors made the same mistake in how they responded. But we are not bound by the sins of the past. We can choose to do better. The Draconian fleet found itself being gently guided to secure orbits around Earth. Instead of prisoners, they were treated as guests. Repair systems that had been sleeping in asteroids awakened to fix their damaged ships. The fear that had driven Vrak Thul across the galaxy began to fade as he realized that these humans truly were different from the legends. Admiral Song watched from Luna Station as representatives from both fleets began meeting to discuss the future. Dr. O was already sharing non-military technologies that could help the Draconian survivors build new homes instead of hiding in the outer darkness. The curator stood beside the human commanders, no longer an ancient guardian, but something new. A bridge between what humanity had been and what it was becoming. The test is complete, he announced. Your ancestors left the galaxy in darkness so that when light returned, it would come from wisdom rather than power. You have proven worthy of that trust. Captain Han, still connected to the defense network, felt the ancient systems beginning a new transformation. Instead of weapons of war, they were becoming tools of exploration and protection. The network that had once enforced humanity's will, through force, was now dedicated to helping all species reach for the stars. The final gift of the collective was the most important. Not just the technology to reshape worlds and travel instantly across the galaxy, but the wisdom to use those gifts responsibly. They showed how previous species had destroyed themselves with power beyond their wisdom, and how humanity's reset had given them the chance to break that cycle. As the connection began to fade, Captain Lee found himself back on the bridge of the New Soul, but everything had changed. The ship now incorporated ancient technology, but it was crewed by humans who understood that their greatest strength was not their weapons, but their choice to use them only in defense of others. War Prince Vrak Thul stood on his own bridge, looking out at Earth through new eyes. His people would not return to hiding in the outer darkness. They would help build something better. A galactic community where strength was measured not by the ability to conquer, but by the wisdom to protect. The defense network sent out a new signal across the galaxy. Not a warning of human power, but an invitation to any species ready to join a community, based on cooperation rather than domination. The age of empires was ending. The age of exploration was beginning. Captain Lee looked out at the stars and knew that humanity's greatest adventure was just starting. They were not the children of conquerors, but the heirs of those who had chosen to become something better. The galaxy awaited, not to be ruled, but to be shared with all who could prove themselves worthy of the trust.